What's up, viewers? I got a new project in the shop today. This is a beautiful Jeep Wrangler, and I'm gonna have to put a new clutch in it, which won't be too bad. This thing's from Georgia, so it's in really good shape, especially underneath. I'll give you a peek at the frame so you can appreciate. This area right here is where they like to rust out, and as you can see, there's no rust there. Look underneath here by the side with the skid plate. No rust there. That skid plate will come right off because there's captured nuts inside the frame that if it gets all rusty, those don't come off. So shouldn't be too bad. First things first, I gotta get this shifter out of here. I think I just have to take this ring off right here, and underneath, then I'll be able to see I think 4 bolts that hold that whole assembly in. And the 4-wheel drive lever, I could just undo the linkage for that at the transfer case. So let's start with that, and then afterwards I'll move on to unhooking the drive shafts. Alrighty, just had a couple little screws holding it down. Let's see if we can get it to pop up without damaging it. It has a rubber gasket around it that seems to be a little stuck to the floor. So you just kind of have to work around it to get it to come loose. So there's one of the bolts I'm going to have to take out. And there's 4. Get them on camera, but there's 4 down in there. There's 1 over here in the shadows and 2 up top. So I'm gonna have to use a swivel to get at them. I was kind of hoping maybe the shifter itself would just come unhooked right there, but there's a, looks like a pin punched through it, so I'd have to punch that out and get a new pin to put it back together. So I guess I'm just gonna unbolt the whole thing and just get a rag or something to shove in the hole, because you don't want to drop anything inside the transmission through that hole, because that'd be bad. Alright, I'm just screwing out the last bolt here. They're 8mm, so I actually had to go underneath and use an open-end wrench and reach my hand up from below to get the other 3, because I didn't have the right combination of swivels and extensions with this little 8mm. I don't have one in a 3/8 where I got all that fancy stuff for. So so this is coming out. I'm gonna pop the shifter in neutral, I think, before I pull this out all the way. I don't know if that's necessary or not, but I figured I'd just put it in neutral so it's easier to get back in. And then we'll move on to the drive shafts. Here's what the inside of that shifter looks like. It's just that little ball goes into a cup, basically, and shifts around. I got some dirt in it when I was pulling it out, so just make sure you check that and clean the dirt out of there before you put it back on when you're done. So I think what I'm going to do next is get the skid plate off before I do the drive shafts. So there's these 4 bolts here that hook to the mountain of the transmission. Once I get those out, I got a jack under here I'm going to lift up and take the weight off of the skid plate, and then get the skid plate out of the way. And I'll use a couple jacks to reposition this transmission jack here to just have that there to hold it up, and that'll give me a lot more room and be able to see what I gotta take off. Okay, now that the skid plate's out of the way, I got to take off this mount here, which has the transmission mount on it and also an exhaust hanger. So once I get this out of the way, I'm going to jack the up here by the transfer case up a little and then reposition that jack right in the middle. So now it's just time to start plucking away at getting all the various things that's not going to come off with the transmission, like the clutch slave cylinder here. Now this has plastic lines and everything, so you're just going to want to take the whole thing off and just kind of pull it off to the side, and I'm going to try to zip tie it out of the way without you know, hurting it or kinking the line or anything. And then you're not going to want to hit the clutch or anything, because then that might push the piston out all the way, and I don't think there's any way to bleed those. I think when you buy a new one, it comes with the line. The whole entire thing comes as like a unit, and it's already pre-bled, so you don't want to screw around with this. You want to just unbolt it and zip tie it out of the way, and make sure you don't hit the clutch pedal while it's off. And as far as the nuts, I usually just screw these little nuts on here a couple turns so I don't lose them. Now I'm going to go ahead and undo these drive shaft, take the caps off so I can drop the drive shaft down. Put a little mark in it so you can put it on the So I got those marks, so I put it on the way it came off. Might want to put something on these caps to keep them from falling off, because otherwise you might have bearings, needle bearings laying all over. So I'm going to see if I can get away with maybe just leaving this drive shaft dangling here, because it's not that big or in the way, so might keep me from dumping the fluid from this transfer case all over the floor if I have to put it on a big angle when I'm taking it out. So up there we got the crank sensor. That's gonna have to come off. It's on the top left hand corner of the bell housing, driver's side, and you can see one of the bolts, and then there's another one on the other side. So I'm just going to unbolt it, pop it out of that hole, and then probably go up in the engine bay and see if I can kind of just hang it up there out of the way, because you don't want that falling in between when you're trying to put this all back together. So you know, you just want to get everything that could fall in between the bell housing and the engine like secured up out of the way, so it doesn't, so you don't get anything pinched between there. It's a weird size, a couple 11mm bolts, and I get on that with a swivel and a long extension, and pop that out of there. Okay, so now I'm trying to take off this bracket. See if I can see bracket there. You can see my wrench is on one of the bolts. I need to take that off. That bolt's on where the transmission and transfer case connect. I got my little 1/4" drive with a 14 through the top side here, and then I think the bottom one I'll probably be able to get at better from underneath. So here's the bottom view of the transfer case linkage. The last shot I was going up through that hole, getting that bolt right there loose from above, and I already got this lower one loosened up. Now we're going underneath, so you can see I got it loose. This is the bracket on the driver's side for the transfer case shift linkage. Now I'm looking at where it actually shifts the lever here on the transfer case. So you got these linkages with bushings. I don't think I'm going to pop that apart. I think I'm just going to see if I can. There's a bolt right here. I'm going to take that bolt loose and see if I can just pop this whole linkage off. So that's where that shifter goes. Just a square thing it sits on, so you can't put it on the wrong way. I was worried it was going to be splined, so you could like get it clocked wrong. But no, just like that, so that's good. There's a connector back here. Make it unplug. It's got that safety clip in it, so you need to pop this out first. Brought this guy with me. There. I think that's popped out all the way, and then you can push down and pull out. So that's how that works. And we got O2 sensor up here that's just zip tied, so I can just cut that zip tie and pull that wire out of the way. Don't need to unplug it. There shouldn't be much plugged into this though, since it's a stick shift, not an automatic. So I'm gonna go through, and I already unplugged whatever this little sensor is right here, 2-wire sensor. You know, obviously we got our crank sensor out of the way. So I'm gonna go and try to get this one. This just looks like a regular GM plug up here, so that's cool. So I can just pull the tab up. Look at that. One thing GM's got going for them is they got the easiest plugs unplugged. You just push up on that and it pops right off. So take a look on this side. Looks like we got a wiring harness just running over top, and I believe it just continues going through here, so it goes to the fuel tank. Probably wires for the fuel tank. It's just zip tied on here, so I'm gonna have to cut them loose so it's not dragging all these wires down with it. Obviously I'm gonna use this strap now that I got everything out of my way, and I can. This Harbor Freight jack thing is $100. Goes up and down with this half-inch drive spinner. And it has a strap, so I can strap this baby down. Hopefully it'll balance the whole thing. Alright, so I got everything unplugged, and there's a couple of zip ties on the back of the transfer case holding some wire looms on I cut off. And because they're zip ties, it got me thinking maybe somebody's been in here before, because, you know, the factory usually uses those plastic wire loom clips. If you've seen one, you know what I'm talking about. And they don't usually use zip ties for that. Then as I was looking up at the bell housing, when I got this dropped down a bit, I noticed in the top there's no bolt in there. Or on the other side, I don't think you can see, but so somebody has had this off before and didn't put the upper bell housing bolts in. Alright, before I get too far ahead of myself, I need to take the starter off. So before you take the starter off, I'm just gonna unbolt it and swing it out of the way. But you're gonna want to unhook the battery definitely, because you know, it's got a power lead running straight from the battery down to it. So if you touch that against the frame, you know, it's gonna short it out. A lot of juice, just right to the battery. Alright, now we're looking at the, obviously this is the oil pan. Here's where the transmission starts in the bell housing. So on the back it's got this little like dust shield. So we're just going to work on getting that off. So I'm working out how to try to get this backing plate off here, whatever you want to call it. Because on the automatics, that's the only thing I've had a transmission on one of these, is 2 automatic ones. That you can unbolt and slide off so you can get at the torque converter bolts. This one appears to go all the way around the transmission without stopping. Like there's a bolt up there for it, and it's wrapped all the way around to the top of the thing. So I guess I'm going to take that bolt out, and I'm sure there's one on the other side. Then maybe I can pull the transmission back and off. So I got the transmission rolled out of the way, and I figured I'd show you just how bad this clutch is. So I took the alignment dowel for the clutch from the kit and stuck in here, and look at that. I can spin it by hand. Well, I got it to turn a little bit off camera, but yeah, there we go. So if I can spin it by hand, it's not going to move the car. So here's some bearings and pilot bushings, and here's the actual clutch. It's a Satch clutch. So you don't want to get any grease on that baby. On that. And there's the pressure plate. And I assume this is so that's going to be your new throwout bearing. So that's cool. And then over there I got a new flywheel. So here we're looking inside the transmission bell housing, and you got your throwout bearing, which the kit came with a new one, so we're going to change it. You can hear it making the noise right there, whereas the new one spins around nice and smooth. So this whole thing, clutch, fork and all, comes out. And just keep in mind there's a little plastic knob that this end sits on, and then over here you got, that's where your slave cylinder goes through to push on it. So, but it does look pretty much the same on either side, so I'm gonna put little scratches over on that side so I know which way to put it back in. So before I pull this off, I'm just studying this crazy looking clip here to see how it's supposed to clip on, so I get it on there right. So it goes like that, and then I just pull this down and hook it into that slot. So I'll get that switched around. Alright, let's get this clutch off here. Look at that. It's a 12. Got the crank pilot bushing out for the input shaft of the transmission. I didn't record it because I used pry bars and just kind of popped it out of there, but I'd recommend, I found out after I got to working on it, you can rent a tool from the parts store that will help you get those out. So that's what I'd recommend. There you go, that looks good to me. The old one, I paid attention to the old one. It was pretty much flush with this metal here, so I just drove it in, and I could hear my socket I was using was a little bit bigger than the actual bearing, so it would hit the outer metal here, so I wouldn't drive it in too far because it's supposed to be just flush. So I cleaned off my finger real good, and this grease, high performance grease that came with the clutch, so I assume it wants me to grease this up with it. Although it did have a little grease on it already. Time to get this flywheel swapped out of here. So they're 19mm bolts. So I'm going to take them off, but we're going to make sure we have a good hold of it before we take the last one out, because that thing's heavy and you don't want to like drop it on yourself. So that's what the surface of this old flywheel looks like. You know, it's pretty discolored. You can see hot spots in it. And towards the center you can see a groove that's been worn in it from the actual rivets of the old clutch, because it's worn down to the rivets. So you're not going to want to reuse that. You want something nice and flat. You can see a little bit of cracking there. So you could maybe get this turned down, but I don't think you can turn it down much. And then you might have to like shim the back of it a little bit to get it to work right. But new flywheels are pretty inexpensive. I think there's like 60 bucks, which it'd probably cost you more money than that to get this one turned. And so I'll just put a new one on. Alright, I got the new flywheel on. I just stuck it up on there. There's a little bit of a hub, and you just gotta be careful you don't drop it on yourself. And I just kept turning it until I seen all the bolt holes line up, because they only, like I said before, line up one way. And I just threw one in there. Now I looked up the torque spec of these, and they're all 105 foot-pounds. So I put a little dab of Loctite on it, you know, some of this stuff, and then now I got my torque wrench set to 105 pounds. When they ship this flywheel, it probably has the same kind of oil on it as like a new brake disc to keep it from rusting while it's being shipped. So you're definitely going to want to spray like brake cleaner on it and clean all that oil off. Also, there's a metal surface there you're gonna want to degrease. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a little more Loctite on all these little bolts here and screw them in. Torque wrench set to 38 foot-pounds. So I'm gonna go ahead and torque these babies down. I'm just gonna go around one last time and check, make sure they're all still at 38. Well, now that I got the clutch all set up, I'm going to see how this transmission jack works and try to put it back on, the transmission back on the engine. So like I said, I managed to find some more of those upper bell housing bolts, so that's good. So I'm just snugging those up. I like to do that when I have the transmission sag down a little bit. I don't let it sag all the way just to keep some of the tension off those motor mounts, but sag it down a little and you can get up in there easier. And before I lift the back end back up to where I could put the skid plate on, I'll probably go ahead and put that crank sensor in there too, since it's easy to get at right now. Tighten those down. Those are 11 millimeters. Also got to finish putting the bolts in for this the dust cover. Those are 18 millimeters, so tighten them down. Just finishing up with all the stuff for the bell housing. It's got these little screw-like 13 millimeter head screws that just help hold down this backing plate. There's the hole for the second one on the passenger side, which you can see if you look down through the Jeep and through this little part between the frame and the floor. That's where I can get at it. I'm gonna pop those in, get that starter on, and then work our way back and start plugging in stuff back here. Time to put the starter back on. So there's two different length bolts for the starter. I had the longer one and the shorter one. So the shorter one goes on top and it had this little bracket to hold the O2 sensor wiring. And the longer one didn't have anything on it, and it went in the bottom. Alright, I'm just going to snug those up with my wrench. Zip tied that O2 sensor back up to that, and the starter's all put on now. This will be a good time for me to start plugging some stuff back in. So, wasn't that much stuff going on, but I think this is maybe the reverse switch or something. Got this guy that's plugging in to here. Yep. Gotta get that vent tube. Stick that back on there. And back here, this guy just plugs into here. Push this little red safety clip back to lock it in. I think I gotta zip tie this over here. And this one gets zip tied up over here. I honestly think that was it. It's pretty simple, not much going on. I'm gonna raise this jack up to get it level. And I can hook up the transfer case linkage when it's when it's all back up about where it's supposed to go. And then I can hook up the drive shafts, and then I guess I'd be getting real close to putting the skid plate back on, which would be the final step. So I'm gonna get those wires zip tied up there, and jack this thing up. Alright, I jacked it up in the back and slid my transfer case shifting bracket back on here where it goes. And if you remember, this guy goes over here. Let me see. This guy swings over here. Slides back on, put your washer, get a little nut back on there. Just going to tighten these down, and then I'm going to put the skid plate on my transmission jack and lower it under here. It should be pretty much done.